Joe Biden gets caught on a hot mic saying that nobody F's with Biden. On the day after OPEC says that they're going to cut production because they don't really care that Joe Biden went over there and begged to have them not cut production. I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was kind of ironic. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get to the OPEC story yesterday, so we could juxtapose those two stories together. So we'll be talking about that and what that means and how funny that actually is. In other news, Elon Musk has agreed with the courts to postpone the lawsuit as they get ready to go through with the filings and get everything done. Hey, Elon Musk could own Twitter by the earliest part of next week, so we'll be talking just a bit about that, where we go from there, and what happens with this. Louisiana is set to remove $794 million from BlackRock funds over the ESG drive, so we'll go over some of that and what that means. And 90% of U.S. adults say mental health is a crisis in the United States. So we'll be talking a bit about that, what that means, and what I think that we do in the future for that. It is going to be all of this and more, plus things that I like and things that I hate today over here on Contemporary. Welcome out to midterm season. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Breaking right now, the Fifth Circuit has said that DACA is unlawful, but they're going to keep it in place for a while. So that'll be on tomorrow's stack. I just found that right as we were looking at the title card there, so we'll be talking about that tomorrow. And, I mean, you guys all know DACA is a big pet project for me. Man, I got a puffball up at the top of my head there. I didn't see that when I was doing the opening line. But, good morning. Hi, I'm Jay Edgar. Welcome to Contemporary. Let's get into it here. We've got a bunch to go over here. The juxtaposition of the OPEC comments, the OPEC actions versus Biden saying, hey man, nobody with the Biden. It's hilarious. I laughed so hard because, and I didn't think about this until I was sitting down to do things. I saw the clip, obviously, earlier on in the day, but then I was going through live chat yesterday and saw where Job for Nine had mentioned that OPEC was doing the production cut, and I went down that rabbit hole as well, and that's where I found the juxtaposition, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and man, it's hilarious. But we've got a lot to go over here today, so we're going to get started over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, KTZed, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast. Go check out PJ Patriot and his new show with Abby. That's probably going well. I haven't actually had a chance to sit down and see that yet, but I'd like to put that up on my rotation. I think I mentioned this before, but you know, back when I first started doing my solo video series, and even when I started doing the live streaming, I constantly, like, around the clock had political commentary going. Now that I'm older, there's very little political content that I actually absorb at this point. I do listen to Styx. I like Styx. But really, other than that, it's music, Fallout lore, some Trek lore or Star Wars lore, and stuff like that. Some documentaries. I've actually been doing a lot of documentaries on the fall of Rome, the Greco-Roman Wars, and that period in history. I've been checking out a lot of that kind of stuff, and even some other occult stuff outside of what Styx does. So Yeah, my political commentary consumption has gone way down, which is weird because I do this every day. But anyway, that's what we get out of this. That's what we see off of this. Over here on Contemporary, let's get into the finance and let's see what's happening on the news for the day. Looking in at the Dow is down. It was down 40 points yesterday, closing at 30,273.87. And it had a wild ride to get there, actually coming back up above and being positive for a little while. And just at the very end of the day, coming back down and closing in the slightest of negatives. Now, it does look like the futures are down, but we will see what happens with that because, overnight action and elsewhere and such like that. So we'll see what happens and where that goes. I'm a little bit nervous for people who have their stocks in 401k right now. I do hope more people are getting out and going into the more solid gains functions, like going into a CD or banknote or something like that. And even though the treasury yield is wild right now, the treasury note is wild, I still wouldn't recommend getting into that either. Note, this is not official financial advice. Your financial advisor knows your situation better than I do, so do check with him before you make any drastic moves. But I'm just looking at numbers here and saying what I would and wouldn't do, and I don't know that I would put anything into the market right now, because even with it being on sale, I hate to say it, I in that 17,000 mark that we saw at the peak of the pandemic, and thinking that actually might be a reality at some point here. But we'll see what happens with that, where this goes, and what we do with that. Looking at your Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is to $20,174 US dollars and 30 US cents. That is up on the day, $13 US dollars and 90 cents. 0.07%, and it's had a whipsaw just throughout the day. It's increased, bringing itself above 20,400. It's decreased, bringing itself down below 20,100, and then kind of settling out after another big jump, and we will see what happens with this as it goes, bringing us out to the 5-day, where we are still remaining with some wild whipsaws, somewhat steady. It's sitting kind of where it was at the time that we were looking at yesterday, but after a big dip below 20,000 and another big dip below 20,000 and a big rise to almost 20,500. So we'll continue to watch this and see what happens. I always say Bitcoin may not be the most practical asset that you can have, but it is, with the way that people treat it out there, a very good indicator as to what the masses think that the market is going to do in the very, very shortest of short terms. So we will keep it up on the stack and see what happens with that. Let's looking at gas, which I think we're going to be talking about gas a lot right at the beginning here. Looking at the Madison area, 420 seems to be the benchmark still. Out towards the west side, we see 420 Quick Trip, 420 Speedway, 420 Exxon. Coming back out towards the east side on the Isthmus, the Amoco is no longer at 389. It has come up to 396. The Quick Trip 949 out on the far east side is still at 389. So, do I know? I think I know where this is. I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, I know where that one is. That's right. That's the one that used to be a PDQ. I talked about that on the air before. But we do see some 420s over on the east side as well. The Exxon is at 420. The BP is up to 410. So a little bit of a mixed bag as you go down the Madison area. But the prices are not looking good. So we will see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures fall, market rally at pivotal point, Tesla and Enphase skid. This is from Ed Carson. Dow futures fell early Thursday along with the S&P and the Nasdaq. The stock market rally attempt showed resilience on Wednesday. The major indices fell sharply on Wednesday morning as Treasury yields and the dollar rebounded, but the stock indices rebounded to close only slightly lower. The market rally still hasn't proven itself. That could happen soon, but patience and cash remain key. I don't know if I'd keep any of my stuff in cash right now either. It's a weird time because no matter what it is that you hold, it's all becoming more worthless. The stock market is dropping out and they keep fire hosing more cash into the economy, which makes your dollar worth less and less every day. Tesla continued to slide with Elon Musk's Twitter takeover, saga still not entirely over. Enphase Energy plunged, breaking recent lows on bad day for solar plays. Medical names held up well, including Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Cigna, Shockwave Medical, Sarepta Therapeutics, Cardinal Health, Option Care Health, Neurocrine Biosciences. Meanwhile, On Semiconductor, Impinj, and Arista Networks are tech names holding up. Oil stocks were strong, with OPEC Plus agreeing to a sizable production cut at Wednesday's meeting, which you're going to pay for at the pump when it gets cold out. Just so you know. ExxonMobil also signaled strong third quarter results. Exxon stock flashed a buy signal on Wednesday. Vertex and Neurocrine Biosciences are on the IBD leaderboard. Now they're giving me abbreviations. I have to go find my abbreviation again. PCTY. That one's not showing up there. With PCTY, stock and Shockwave on the watch list. Huh, that's weird. They don't have that one up there at all. I'm not missing it. It's not actually up there. Shockwave stock, Vertex, Palo City, Sarepta, and onsemi are on the IBD 50. Arista Networks, Vertex, On Semiconductor, and Enphase stock are on the IBD Big Cap 20. onsemi was Wednesday's IBD stock of the day, with Palo City, Enphase, and Arista Networks also recent picks. That's one of the things that kind of drives me nuts a little bit with IBD, is that they switch back and forth between stock symbols and names. And I'd like to stick with names if possible here, so I try to stick with them. But they hadn't put Palo City up there. I believe PCTY is Palo City. So yeah, I'm sitting over here trying to find where it says Palo City above, and I see nothing. But oh, now it's down here. So that's what they have off of that. On the futures, Dow futures fell 0.6 versus fair value. The S&P declined 0.65 and the Nasdaq lost 0.65. The 10-year yield was flat at 3.76. Crude oil edged lower. The Biden admin may ease sanctions on Venezuela. Yeah, that's the other funny part, paving the way for Chevron and others to resume crude production there, potentially boosting U.S. supplies and lowering prices. Anything to keep us from drilling here in our country. Anything to keep the people in our country off the oil rigs. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So some wild stuff right now, and yeah, like I said, it's not even safe to keep everything in cash right now because that's continuing to be fire hose in the economy. If you're an investor, this is not an easy time for you at all. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. All the ways Biden has botched the U.S. response to high gas prices. From Joseph Curl. Back in March, shortly after Russian President Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, gasoline prices in the U.S. began to soar. Make no mistake, prices were already rising quickly when President Biden took office on January 20th, 2021. The average cost for a gallon of regular gas was $2.38. It was still below $2 here in Wisconsin. By the time Putin invaded, it cost $3.53. So Putin wasn't to blame for that, even though Biden has long called skyrocketing costs at the pump Putin's price hike. By the end of March, a gallon cost $4.23. That's when Biden decided to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, America's massive reserve set aside for emergencies, which is what we should have been using, by the way, in Florida this year, not our regular production. Congress created the SPR in 1975, not long after Americans suffered through gas shortages and long lines at the pump as the result of the 1973 embargo by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Companies. The law was designed to reduce the impact of severe energy supply interruptions either by embargoes or natural disasters, Forbes reported. Biden authorized the release of 125 million barrels of oil. The reserves can hold more than 700 million barrels, but the U.S. consumes about 20 million a day, so Biden's release wouldn't last long. Prices kept going up, $4.23 by the end of March, then leveled off a bit, running just above the $4 mark for 5 weeks, then it started all over again. $4.62 by the end of May, and even $5 in mid-June. Then, as prices began to fall again, dropping to $4.33 by the end of July, Biden took a victory lap, releasing a White House statement saying the Treasury Department estimates the Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases by Biden and international partners reduced the price of gasoline by up to 40 cents per gallon. Which they didn't, by the way. Hey man, I've been working to make sure that the price of oil comes down. The price at the pump comes down as well, in real time, Biden said, noting the pump prices had fallen every day this summer for 38 days in a row. Economists, though, say the SPR release wasn't the reason for falling prices. Prices had gotten so high consumers stopped consuming. But the main reason for the fall is the decline in oil prices, CNBC reported in August. Crude is the single largest factor influencing gas prices, accounting for more than 50% of what we pay at the pump. After 99 days of falling prices, they started going up again. So on Tuesday, reporters asked the White House press secretary, token diversity hire, about it all. You said the president is responsible for gas prices coming down. Is the president responsible for gas prices going up? So it's a lot more nuanced than that, diversity hire said. You know this. There have been global challenges that we've dealt with. When I say all, meaning other countries as well have dealt with since the pandemic. There's been a pandemic, and then there's been Putin's war, and Putin's war has increased gas prices at the pump. We have seen that over the past several months, she said. And there you have it. Biden will take the credit, but not the blame. Prices are expected to continue rising. The nationwide average price of gasoline increased Tuesday for the 14th consecutive day, hitting $3.81 per gallon. So there are a few things that I want to talk about with this. And there are a few things outside of what the Daily Wire had to say with this. Number one, it's Russia. There is a Russian aspect to this. It's not the same as the Russian aspect of what we did, but there's the Biden aspect of, I'm going to shut down oil production in this country because we're polluting too much to get the oil, and just buy your electric car, man. Come on. There was that aspect to it. There is a Russian aspect to it, but it has nothing, well, it has something to do with the invasion. But not directly. We did not get enough oil directly from Russia for their embargo to affect our prices the way that they did. But Russia is allied with OPEC Plus, which means that they can throw their weight around with them and say, you stop pumping oil. Cut by 2 million barrels per day. We bring prices back up. We put squeeze on Biden. We do not like him. Like it or not, there is that aspect that goes with this. But what has been happening consistently since prices started going up? It's getting cold. A byproduct, and something that has to get made out of the same oil that you're using to fuel your car, is heating oil. And that does take a cut out of your diesel production as well, which is what's running everything around the country. It is above all and everything else a supply issue. We don't have the supply, prices are going up. Now, when prices go up, the demand will falter. Bring the prices back down, but then the supply will crunch back in and bring the prices back up. I am not looking forward to what the heating bill is going to be this winter. I have thankfully not had to turn the heater on this year, although maybe I should, although this is not cold, this is allergies. I thought it was a cold for a little bit. I can feel it right there, but yeah, there are a lot of things going on around this outside of just the, I did that. But a lot of that is, I did that. That was me. I did that. But don't worry. We have electric vehicles to take us back up. This was so funny. They think they're making a point off of this. Elements tells us every electric semi-truck in one graphic. Which is actually not true. There are a couple other ones that weren't listed on this. So let's go over some of the stats from Marcus Liu. And they give us the capabilities, not the price. and what the charge time is as well. So how long it takes for you to go back and plug it in and then be back out on the road. Starting 1, the Tesla Semi, expected delivery 2023, charge time, we don't know. Range, they're the winner on the range battle, that's 300 to 500 miles, which, I mean, if you're over the road, that's not out of the question for before you have to go for your break over the road, but then, I mean, when you have to stop your ELD break or your bathroom break or anything else like that, I mean, 500 miles, 70 miles an hour, that's like, what, maybe 7 hours throughout the day? I know it takes probably about 5 hours to drive 300 miles because we did that all the time, driving from Redacted to Kenosha. I know all about that. So yeah, maybe about 7 hours that you can run on that, just hammering down the highway, depending on what your load is. So this is the most feasible, but again, the next question is going to be how long on your charge time before you can be back up and running again. Tesla Semi is powered by 4 electric motors and boasts the highest range among its competitors. Early customers include PepsiCo, 100 units, and FedEx, 20 units. But it seems like nobody else can really keep up at this point, including a couple of models that I've never heard of before, which is weird. The E-Cascadia from Freightliner, expected delivery 2022, charges 80% in as low as 1.5 hours. Your range at 100% is only 250 miles. And if you, in 1.5 hours, only get 80%, that's probably maybe 200 to 230 miles is what you get out of that second charge. 2.5 hours of driving. Volvo's delivery, the VNR Electric, 275 miles, 80% in as low as an hour. That's slightly better, but not much. The T680E from Kenworth can charge 100% in 3.3 hours, but I mean, what do you do with your driver for those 3.3 hours? No delivery date on that, but its range, 100% as low as 3.3 hours, is only 150. And it's actually the same as its other PACCAR offering, the Peterbilt 579 EV. They're basically the same truck, it's just they've got different emblems on the front. They're both made by the PACCAR Engine Corporation, and they've got a little bit different electronics in the cab, but other than that, they're the same truck. Also, 100% as low as 3.3 with 150 mile range. Just shy of 3 hours of driving, and then 3.3 hours of full charge. Figures based on full load, that is not determined in this article, so I do not have the information to answer that question. The 8TT from BYD, 100% in as low as 2.5 hours with 167 mile range. And the Nikola TRE BEV, 10% to 80% in as low as 2 hours. So that, we have no idea what's going on with that. But it does allegedly have a much longer range, 350 miles. So don't worry, the electric semis are going to come save us. 2 hours at a time. We'll see what happens with that. Alright, let's talk OPEC. Top story today, OPEC Plus to cut oil production by 2 million barrels per day to shore up prices, defying U.S. pressure. From Sam Meredith. A group of some of the world's most powerful oil producers on Wednesday agreed to impose deep output cuts, seeking to spur a recovery in crude prices, despite calls from the U.S. to pump more to help the global economy. OPEC and non-OPEC allies, a group often referred to as OPEC Plus, decided at their first face-to-face gathering in Vienna since 2020 to reduce production by 2 million barrels per day from November. Energy market participants had expected OPEC Plus, which includes Saudi Arabia and Russia, to impose output cuts of somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million barrels. I didn't plan to sit down and watch a video on this, but I think we actually might go and sit and watch this one, because that's kind of the point of why I titled this particular episode the way that I did, and what's actually happening here. But let's read a little bit more before we get into that. The move represents a major reversal in production policy for the alliance, which slashed output by a record 10 million barrels per day in early 2020, when demand plummeted due to the pinkpox pandemic. The oil cartel has since gradually unwound those record cuts, albeit with several OPEC Plus countries struggling to fulfill their quotas. Oil prices have fallen to roughly $80 a barrel from more than $120 in early June amid growing fears about the prospect of global economic recession. The production cut for November is an attempt to reverse this slide, despite repeated pressure from U.S. President Biden's admin for the group to pump more to lower fuel prices ahead of the midterm elections next month, and that's what this is really all about. Biden doesn't care about you, about what you spend on energy, and to be fair, neither did Trump. But he doesn't care about that. All he cares about is making a good show before the midterms. Let's listen to what CNBC has to say about no one listening to the White House on energy markets, which I think we kind of know at this point. Let's have a listen.
Yeah, great to have you with us.
Hi, Melissa.
So surprise, surprise, the White House has absolutely no say in terms of setting global oil production. I mean, that's really underscored by today's move by OPEC Plus.
It sure is. I think that essentially no one's listening to the White House as it relates to energy markets. OPEC's not. They're cutting production when the White House wants more production. You've got U.S. producers that aren't drilling more. Rig count's flat since the summer. And then you've got the markets that are taking price up when the president's telling us that we want price down. So I think that the reality is that the recession or lack thereof is the driver and OPEC is the second driver.
When we're seeing the move in WTI and we're seeing the move in particular in Brent today, Dan, I'm wondering if you think that 2 million barrel cut is being reflected so far in the price, or if there's some doubt that cut will actually happen.
Yeah, I think if we look, we're up 10% on the price of both Brent and TI in the last few days. So that's dialing in that we'll probably take somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million barrels off the market. The 2 million barrel cut, some of that allocation, it won't be taken up by the OPEC producers. So call it 1 million barrels a day, maybe a little less. That's still a meaningful number. It's the same amount that the U.S. SPR is taking into the market every day. So we're essentially negating the SPR from now until the end of November.
How does all of this translate, Dan, into your view of the geopolitics of the energy picture, in that, Saudi is basically ignoring the United States at this point? Europe, the IEA head has said that, great, Europe has a lot of nat gas storage for this winter, but next year Europe is going to be heading into an energy crisis. So it's really testing the resolve of developed countries in terms of this war in Ukraine and the ability to actually stick together against Russia.
And they're going to run back out to Russia off of that. But realistically, the thing that gets me about this is the fact that everyone was so proud of the fact that Biden went over to Saudi Arabia and said, hey man, go pump some more. After condemning Saudi Arabia. And this is where I think that Saudi Arabia is in the right for this. And it blows. Because I do drive a vehicle that gets 20 miles per gallon. Which seems high for me, because most everything that I'd owned before, not this particular truck that I owned, but the last one, usually got like 8 to 12. And now I'm sitting here thinking, 20 miles a gallon is such a horrible number. But realistically, that's probably some of the highest fuel economy I've had in a very, very long time. But with that being said, with what we're saying off of this and where this is going, yeah, it blows that the prices are going up, but this is also the Biden admin reaping what they sow. He came into this particular presidential term swinging, saying, "Hey, no, we're not going to kowtow to dictators like that evil orange man went and did all the time. I'm going to go over there and tell Mohammed bin Salman that I'm going to give him the business. He can't go and kill Khashoggi like that." And Joe, wake up! No, Khashoggi, he's a great guy, man, and we're not going to let them push us around. Which was immediately followed by, "Hey, man, hey, come on and go ahead and keep trading in the dollar on your oil, and we got to have you pump up the production, man. Come on." As much as it sucks that gas is this high, Saudi Arabia is well within their rights to do this. And if the Biden admin wants to come back out and do something about the gas prices here, they really need to just open up their own production. It's time. We have some production going on here, but it's not nearly to the volume that it needs to be to take up the slack on some of the stuff. And also, by the way, depending on somebody who is allied with the country that you keep waving your bird around at. I'm not going to do that, obviously, because we might actually have some kids watching or listening because of, the AM radio time slot. But you get what I'm saying here. When you're flying the birds at Russia, their allies don't really want to go back and kowtow and do what it is that's going to make life best for you. I don't blame them. I wish they would ramp up their production, because I'd sure love to see 91 cents a gallon gas again, but on the other side of that, I can understand why they would come back down and do something like this. Now that rant is over, let's get back up here. Looking in at CNN, inside the White House's failed effort to dissuade OPEC from cutting oil production to avoid a total disaster. With the low support, I do think that this is a lot of CYA. A lot of people come out and say, "Oh, well, CNN has turned right-wing because they're putting articles out like this." When, realistically, I think a lot of this is throwing them under the bus to try to throw the midterms to congressional candidates who want to distance themselves from the Biden White House. And who could blame them at this point? From Alex Marquardt, Natasha Bertrand, and Phil Mattingly. The Biden admin launched a full-scale pressure campaign in a last-ditch effort to dissuade the Middle Eastern allies from dramatically cutting oil production, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. But that effort appears to have failed following Wednesday's crucial meeting. OPEC+, the international cartel of oil producers that, as expected, announced a significant cut to output in an effort to raise oil prices that in turn will likely cause the U.S. gasoline prices to rise at a precarious time for the Biden admin, just 5 weeks before the midterm elections. On Wednesday morning, OPEC+ oil ministers meeting in Vienna agreed to even larger production cut than the White House had feared, 2 million barrels per day. Beginning in November, according to a readout of the meeting released on Wednesday, the ministers said the cuts were necessary in light of the uncertainty that surrounds the global economic and oil market outlooks. President Biden told CNN's Arlette Sains on Wednesday that he was I'm concerned about the cuts, man, which he viewed as unnecessary. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken told reporters when asked about the move, when it comes to OPEC, we made it clear our views to OPEC members. For the past several days, Biden's senior-most energy, economic, and foreign policy officials were enlisted to lobby their foreign counterparts in Middle Eastern allied countries, including Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, to vote against cutting oil production. Wednesday's production cut amounts to the largest cut since the beginning of the pandemic and could lead to the dramatic spike in oil prices. So, by the way, strap yourselves in and fill up, because you're probably going to need it. Some of the draft talking points circulated by the White House to the Treasury Department on Monday that were obtained by CNN framed the prospect of a production cut as a total disaster and warned that it could be taken as a hostile act. Yeah, probably. Like going in there and saying you're going to go give the leader of an Arab country the business because he directly killed a journalist that, while I believe that he did have him killed, they don't see any direct evidence of that. It's important that everyone is aware of just how high the stakes are, said a U.S. official, of what was framed as a broad admin effort that's expected to continue in the lead up to the Wednesday OPEC Plus meeting. The White House is having a spasm and panicking, another U.S. official said, describing this latest admin effort as taking the gloves off. According to the White House official, the talking points being drafted and exchanged by staffers and not approved by the White House leadership or used with foreign partners. In a statement to CNN, the National Security Council spokesperson, Adrienne Watson, said, "We've been clear that energy supply should meet demand to support economic growth and lower prices for the consumers around the world, and we continue to talk with our partners about that." For Biden, a dramatic cut in oil production could not come at a worse time. The admin has for months engaged in an intensive domestic and foreign policy effort to mitigate soaring energy prices in the wake of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. That work appeared to pay off, with U.S. gasoline prices falling for almost 100 days in a row. Well, with just a month to go before the critical midterm elections, U.S. gasoline prices have begun to creep up again, posing a political risk that the White House is desperately trying to avoid. And I remind you again at the same time that it's starting to get cold and fuel oil is starting to become a requirement. As U.S. officials have moved to gauge the potential domestic options to head off gradual increases over the last several weeks, the news of major OPEC Plus actions presents a particularly acute challenge. Watson, the NSC spokesperson, declined to comment on the midterms, saying instead, "Thanks to the president's efforts, energy prices have declined sharply from their highs, and American consumers are paying far less at the pump, even though we're paying far more at the pump than we were on January 20th, 2021. I don't necessarily give advice out. Well, I do. That's a lie. I give a lot of advice out. That's just nobody listens. If I was the energy secretary, if I was Granholm, or anybody else in the White House right now, my first suggestion would be to walk up. If I wasn't Granholm myself, but if I was C. Granholm, my first idea would be to walk up to Granholm and say, hey, all restrictions off U.S. oil. We'll even let them waive some of their environmental restrictions right now. All leases are approved on federal lands instantly. We'll even give them a discount on their leasing prices. Get those rigs set up. Now, as far as the supply goes, that would not, at this point, affect any of the supply. But it would get the investors out there ready to go back and start buying up oil as fast as they could. And also slashing some of their prices to pump some of the expensive stuff out so they could get the new local domestic cheaper stuff in. If Saudi Arabia is going to cut by 2 million barrels a day, we should be ramping up our production by 3 to 5 million barrels per day. Are they going to do that? No. And by the way, in doing so, and this is part of the reason they're not going to do that, this would be telling the Climate Change Progressive Caucus to screw themselves, which they've needed to do for a very long time. But again, if you've got a vat full of really expensive oil, and you want to get a bunch of cheap oil in its place, you're going to sell that expensive oil at a loss because you can sell that cheap oil at a gain. But that's where we have coming off of that. The Hill's Morning Report, OPEC stiff arms Biden. Yes, they do. From Alexis Simendinger and Christina Karish. Bad news for petroleum and energy prices in the West. OPEC on Wednesday agreed to steep cuts in oil production, which means less supply in an already tight market. That in turn means customers are likely to pay more. I think this is all review. Let's skip over this one. Some of the reaction to this, though, from CNBC again, U.S. delivers angry rebuke of massive OPEC plus production cut, and it could backfire for Saudi Arabia. This is pure propaganda. Number one, if you decided not to ramp up your own production in your own country, or even go and make an alliance with Mexico and grab their massive oil field, by the way, because Mexico is sitting on one of the biggest oil fields on the planet, and it's not being tapped. You don't, at that point, get angry with the person who you're depending on. No, you don't do that. That's stupid. That would be a stupid thing to do. You come out and you put your arm around them and say, hey, man, I'm thinking about looking the other way about Khashoggi. Let's make a deal, man. Come on. This is from Sam Meredith and Natasha Tarak. The White House angrily pushed back at OPEC Plus after the oil producer group announced its largest supply cut since 2020, lashing out at what President Biden's admin described as a short-sighted decision. Energy analysts believe the deep production cuts could yet backfire for OPEC kingpin and U.S. ally Saudi Arabia, particularly as Biden hinted Congress would soon seek to rein in the Middle East-dominated group's influence over energy prices. Good luck. In a statement, the White House said Biden was disappointed by the short-sighted decision by OPEC Plus to cut production quotas while the global economy is dealing with the continued negative impact of Putin's invasion of the Ukraine. It added that Biden had directed the Department of Energy to release another 10 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve next month. While that's at its lowest point in history, it added that Biden had directed the Department of Energy to release another 10 million barrels. Oh, I read that one already. In light of today's action, the Biden admin will also consult with the Congress on additional tools and authorities to reduce OPEC's control over energy prices, the White House says. Ooh, pick me. I know what you can do to reduce OPEC's control over energy prices. Ooh, come here. Come. Mr. Biden. Right here. I know. Oh, wait. I gave my idea already. Strategist led by Helimia Croft at RBC Capital Markets said that while the U.S. signaled further Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases were in the offing, they were unlikely to see another blockbuster release in the near term. A more clear risk, in our view, is the introduction of U.S. product export restrictions in a rising retail gas price environment, analysts at RBC Capital Markets said, which translates to throwing Europe out in the cold, by the way, just so you know. That will become a scandal later on. Congressional action on NOPEC legislation also looks like a credible outcome in the light of National Security Council statement about working with Congress to reduce OPEC's overall influence in the oil market. White House opposition to NOPEC has served as a restraining influence on congressional leaders, they continued. Today's dog whistle may be interpreted as a sign that the president will not necessarily stand in the way of a floor vote on the bill that would declare OPEC a cartel and subject the members to Sherman antitrust legislation. Are you stupid? What is NOPEC? The No Oil Producing and Exporting Cartels, or NOPEC bill, designed to protect U.S. consumers and businesses from artificial oil spikes. Are you stupid? The U.S. legislation, which passed Senate committee early May but has not yet been signed into law, could expose OPEC countries and partners to lawsuits for orchestrating supply cuts that raise global crude oil prices. I asked the question again, knowing the answer already, but are you stupid? Hey, we're currently depending on you for all of our energy production right now. And by the way, we're going to sue you at the same time. Are you stupid? Don't bother answering that question. I already know the answer to that question. Reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend not that long ago who was having issues and working on filing a lawsuit with the apartment complex that he lived in. And it was a big corporate complex, so hundreds of thousands of units and big money, probably BlackRock involved in it and everything. I know it was an out-of-state investor that called him and said that, no, we want to settle out of court at this point. But the first thing I said when the guy first started talking about that he was going to go back and sue his apartment complex, I said, the first thing I said was, do you have another place to live that you can move to in a hurry? Yes, that sounds like a grand idea. Go sue the company that is dedicated to putting the roof over your head. You may come home and find out that, oh, hey, there's an eviction notice on my door. Which in Wisconsin, they do have to give you 30 days to go back and find a new place to live. But still, you find that notice on your door and, oh, well, now you have to find a place to live in a hurry. With your one reference for renting currently contesting you in court. So that is my advice to Congress. Before you go back and do something stupid like this, make sure you have another supply of oil that you can use and tap in a hurry, not something that'll take 6 months to get to market. And preferably not the strategic oil reserve. From the Wall Street Journal. This is their response. Anything that they can do to keep from getting it out of our ground here. U.S. looks to ease Venezuela sanctions, enabling Chevron to pump oil. That's right. Saudi Arabia made you mad. Oh, well, let's go to Venezuela. From Patricia Garip and Vivian Salama and Kejal Vias. The Biden admin is preparing to scale down sanctions on Venezuela's authoritarian regime to allow Chevron to resume pumping oil there, paving the way for a potential reopening of U.S. and European markets to oil exports from Venezuela, according to people familiar with the proposal. In exchange for the significant sanctions relief, the government of Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro would resume long-suspending talks with the country's opposition to discuss conditions needed to hold free and fair presidential elections in 2024, and even archived. Well, by this archive. Continue reading with a Wall Street Journal membership. That's okay. I grabbed one from the Daily Wire on the same topic. Ironic. I can read the Daily Wire for free with an ad blocker on, but Wall Street Journal, even archive, still cuts me off. And I will leave my commentary on Ben Shapiro aside for the moment. From the Daily Wire, Biden to ease sanctions on socialist Venezuela, release Maduro's convicted narco-trafficker nephews, from Ryan Saavedra. President Biden is reportedly preparing to ease sanctions on socialist Venezuela to allow a U.S. oil company to resume production there, which comes as OPEC announced earlier Wednesday it would rather be significantly cutting oil production. The New York Times, a former newspaper, reported that Russia and Saudi Arabia, acting as leaders of the 23-member nation OPEC energy cartel, announced a massive reduction in oil production of 2 million barrels per day, a move that will likely send gas prices skyrocketing and cause political problems for the Biden admin. The Biden admin is now preparing to lift sanctions on Venezuela and allow Chevron to pump oil again from the leftist authoritarian regime, just like ours, in an attempt to stave off political disaster for the admin caused by rising fuel prices. The admin would give significant sanctions relief if Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's regime held talks with the country's political opposition and held a free and fair election in 2024. The admin has also worked out a deal freeing up hundreds of millions of dollars in Venezuelan funds that are frozen in U.S. banking institutions. This right here just makes what we're about to see from the political landscape even funnier. So OPEC is openly laughing at you, which they should be at this point. Let's be realistic about that. OPEC is openly laughing at you. Meanwhile, all of these countries are, on paper, allied with Russia, who you do nothing but slander and badmouth from that office, and have been since Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015, by the way. And your first thought, mind you, opening up oil fields, drilling rigs, and a host of other aspects of the U.S. economy would add thousands, if not millions of jobs in this country that pay well. Instead, your thought is, you know what? No, let's go drill it out of Venezuela. No, let's let Venezuela drill it out for them. For us. That makes this even funnier. From Insider, Hot Mike catches Biden cursing to defend his family name while surveying Hurricane Ian damage. So, on the day that we're going through this and talking about OPEC Plus and cutting production because, you know, they're mad at the Biden admin, this is what he has to say. Earmuffs. If you've got your kids in the room, we've got earmuffs for this one.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it. I picked up things.
No one fucks with my
Yeah, goddamn right.
and I can't argue with your brothers outside the house.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
No one fucks with my
Yeah, goddamn.
Yeah, unless you're Saudi Arabia. Unless you're OPEC coming out here saying, yeah, no, we're going to cut 2 million barrels a day. Screw you. From Oma Sadiq. President Biden was caught on a hot mic dropping an F-bomb in a seemingly lighthearted conversation with a local mayor during his Wednesday visit to Florida to survey the damage caused by Hurricane Ian. No one screws with the Biden, man, the president said to Fort Myers Beach Mayor Ray Murphy in a clip shared on social media. Yeah, you're damn right, Murphy said in response. The pair then laughed and shook hands and parted ways. It's unclear what they were discussing. The comments came after Biden had just wrapped up a joint news conference with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Biden has been overheard cursing on several occasions, resulting in viral moments during a press conference in January at the White House. He called Fox News reporter Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bee. In perhaps one of Biden's most well-known hot mic moments, he was caught telling then-President Barack Obama in 2010 that the signing of the ACA was a big effing deal. Hurricane Ian, a Category 4 storm, killed at least 68 people in Florida after it made landfall last week. The Biden admin has provided federal support to the storm-ravaged state as well as Puerto Rico, which was recently suffering from Hurricane Fiona. Biden visited Puerto Rico on Monday. You can't go back to what it was before, Biden said during Wednesday's press conference. You've got to build back better. Trademark. Because we know more is coming. So, and I mean, this actually probably would only be a passing story for me if it wasn't for the fact that Saudi Arabia, like I said, was, in the most literal sense of the terms, screwing with Biden. right now. All right, we got to turn our attention to some other things that are going on here around the world before we move out of everything else here. Lindsey Graham had this tweet thread, and we're going to go through the entire tweet thread. We don't have a lot of Russia-Ukraine news today, but I do want to go through this tweet thread. I actually didn't add this to things that I hate, even though I hate this with a passion. But I had too much on things that I hate. I've got some good stuff on things that I like, though, as well. All right, Lindsey Graham. Should I do this whole thread in Lindsey Graham voice? I think I should. Yeah, let's do this all in Lindsey Graham voice. Sugar, with all due respect to Elon Musk, and maybe he'll charge my Tesla, and I do respect him, I would suggest that he needs to understand the fact of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. Suggesting we end the Russian invasion by simply giving Russia parts of Ukraine after all the suffering is dumb, Sugar. It's all an affront to the bravery of Ukrainians fighting to defend their homeland. Meanwhile, until you provide me evidence otherwise that this was not a legitimate vote, all I see is a vote of 98, 99, and 96% on the regions to go join Russia. In 94, through the Budapest Memoranda, and I had a young boy from Budapest staying with me at the time, and you know, everything was above board because I'm a good, clean Christian man. Well, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons arsenal, the third largest in the world, in return for assurances their territorial integrity would be protected. It was part of an agreement signed by Russia that included Crimea and the Donbass as part of Ukraine. If you want peace in Ukraine, which we all do, except for me, because I want to see that big missile go stick right into Ukraine, would simply demand Russia honor the boundaries that they agreed to in 94 and reduce their forces. To do otherwise is legitimize a bait and switch by Russia, and man, I wish I could have some Russian bait in me, and signal to the other bad actors to take what you want by force. Putin, bad actor, come and take what you want by force. You know you want some of this, Sugar. If Elon and others want the world to continue to be in chaos, then by all means capitulate to Putin and reward his aggression. And while we're at it, maybe Congress should revisit the electric vehicle tax credit boondoggle. It's where the credit is now solely benefiting electric vehicle manufacturers who have increased its prices equal to the tax credit. It could be a good way to help save money by applying those funds to assisting Ukrainians and defending their homeland. So that is Lindsey Graham advocating that we don't capitulate at all to Russia, instead go to war with them. Does my comment come on top? Oh, Elon's comes up on top. LP of New Hampshire also. Elon, assuming you believe that the will of the people matters, we should, in any given conflict region, support the will of those who live there. Most of Ukraine unequivocally wants to be part of Ukraine, but some eastern portions have Russian majorities that prefer Russia. Tim Young says warmonger Lindsey is going to get to the bottom of it. Meanwhile, he wants one of those bad actors to get to the bottom of him. And here is realism here. There does have to be some sort of compromise with this, if we're going to end this. Because while Zelensky wants the entire Donbass region, because I believe that is where all of his production is, the people in the Donbass region don't want to be a part of your country anymore. And I don't blame them. Do we do a land border? Do we just let everybody go free over into Russia? I don't know. I know that there was talk of those countries being independent at some point. But, I mean, I wouldn't be independent in that region right now. Screw that. Alright, let's talk more about Florida. Biden and DeSantis put political rivalry aside for now as President tours hurricane damage. From Steve Contorno. President Biden was in Florida to see firsthand the destruction caused by Hurricane Ian, once again putting a spotlight on his icy relationship with Governor DeSantis. The combative Republican leader posed to potentially challenge the Democrat for the presidency in 2024. What an AstroTurf. DeSantis has made no indication that he plans to be the nominee in 2024. For the time being, Biden and DeSantis have put their budding political rivalry aside, and their admins have worked in concert since the hurricane's deadly collision with Florida's west coast that was on display on Wednesday. Shortly after touring the hurricane-ravaged Gulf Coast communities, by helicopter, Biden was greeted at the Fisherman's Wharf by DeSantis and his wife Casey, where they talked for several minutes among the wreckage. In a joint appearance moments later, Biden and DeSantis emphasized to reporters that their two admins, though often at odds, are working closely together on the rescue and recovery efforts. I'm just thankful that everyone has banded together, DeSantis said before adding, Mr. President, welcome to Florida. We appreciate working together across various levels of government. Biden said the cooperation has been extraordinary, and he emphasized the ability of Americans across the country to help in times of need and urged Floridians to someday return the favor. Well, we're going to get you through all this because of the grit that all of you, but when you get it done, when you hear it happen somewhere else, remember that this the United States of America. We're all in this together. Later, Biden told reporters that DeSantis had done a good job leading Florida through the disaster, calling the Republicans' response, "It's pretty remarkable, man," which makes it very, very hard for everyone else to chant Death Santis and say that he didn't do crap. We have very different political philosophies, man. But we worked hand in glove. In dealing with this crisis, we've been in complete lockstep, man. Come on. The past week marks the second time Biden and DeSantis have welcomed a brief truce in the aftermath of a tragedy. A week after the condo tower collapsed in Surfside, Florida last year, killing 98 people, Biden and DeSantis sat side by side in a public display of bipartisan mourning. They exchanged, there it went, it switched, niceties in front of cameras, with Biden affectionately patting DeSantis on the arm. We live in a nation where we can cooperate, Biden said during the joint appearance, and it's really important. Which, I mean, that's good. They really should. They should take some time and work together. When it's for the people, I know that they have, again, very different ideas on how for the people works. And Biden thinks that taxing the hell out of all of us is the best way to go and get aid to all these people. And DeSantis would like to find alternative methods without directly taxing out the people. I would still say that private charity is the best option to do so, but I mean, there exists no private charity currently to go and do anything like that, so unfortunately we have to have the government do some of what we're doing with this, as much as I hate the government. I do enjoy the fact that these two can put things aside to go back and make things happen. From the Daily Wire, though, a little bit of trolling going on against Biden. A glimpse into the future. Conservatives bust Biden, have fun with photo of DeSantis behind the presidential podium. Because yes, of course, they have to bring his podium with his seal on it in order for him to say a word. Conservatives on social media mocked the Biden admin and had fun with a photo of Ron DeSantis at the presidential podium on Wednesday. DeSantis attended a press conference with Joe Biden, and state and local officials Wednesday afternoon. Live footage showed the Florida governor speaking behind a podium emblazoned with the seal of the President of the United States. DeSantis is considered a top contender to challenge Biden in 24, and critics mock the poor planning and optics of the photo. The Twitter storm started when Republican Governors Association Communications Director Jesse Hunt shared a picture of Fox News' coverage of the press conference on Twitter. It's moments like this when many in the national press should realize that their preconceived notions about Ron DeSantis and his leadership style are way off base, Hunt wrote. The photo shows DeSantis speaking behind the presidential podium, while Biden and Nikki Fried, who previously ran to challenge DeSantis for the governorship, stood behind him. There is the picture right there. I don't know why Biden would be in that picture if DeSantis was the president, but regardless. Conservatives on Twitter quickly pointed out the irony of giving one of Biden's chief political rivals an easy photo op behind a presidential podium and mocked the White House advanced media team for it. The Biden White House arranged a photo op for Ron DeSantis to speak at a podium with the presidential seal. Wow. Larry O'Connor wrote on Twitter, "The Biden advance team letting DeSantis speak from behind the presidential seal is something to behold," Eric Erickson wrote. A tough day for the White House advance team, Daily Wire host Michael Knowles joked. Others users pointed out that standing behind a presidential podium is a fitting aesthetic for DeSantis. "He looks good behind that podium," AEI senior fellow and Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen tweeted. "Looks good to me," Fox News contributor Lisa Booth added. "Man, DeSantis behind the presidential seal looks just about perfect," Newsbusters managing editor Chris Hook said. So, as far as DeSantis, I still wouldn't vote for him. He did way too much by EO in the early parts of his governorship. But I do enjoy the fact that there are so many people that are trolling him this way. From ABC, we got a little bit of a shotgun blast of various other points of news before we get to thing I like and thing that I hate, so let's get through the rest of these here. From ABC, Supreme Court's eyes limits to Voting Rights Act in election map dispute. From Devin Dwyer, the Supreme Court on Tuesday engaged in an emotionally charged debate over whether to impose new limits on the Voting Rights Act and curb long-standing protections against race discrimination in the drawing of electoral maps. Several of the court's conservative justices showed an openness to raising the legal bar for challenges to maps that may deny a minority group equal opportunity to elect preferred candidates. Justice Samuel Alito suggested that the current standard is so loose that a state can never win. As a practical matter, in every place in the South, and maybe in other places, he said, will not the plaintiffs always run the table? Civil rights groups fear any narrowing of the law could seriously undermine the landmark VRA, which the court's conservative majority has already sharply curtailed in a series of recent discussions. This is an important statute. It's one of the great achievements of American democracy to achieve equal political opportunities regardless of race, to ensure that African Americans could have as much political power as white Americans could, said Justice Elena Kagan, who argued forcefully for its defense. The justices heard nearly 2 hours of oral arguments in the case, Merrill versus Milligan, which is a dispute over congressional maps drawn by Alabama's Republican-led state legislature in 2021 following the 2020 census. A group of black residents alleges the state's 7 newly drawn congressional districts, only one of which is majority black, dilute black voting strength in violation of federal law. Black voters make up 27% of the voting age population in Alabama. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, arguing in support of the challengers to the Alabama redistricting, called the maps an extreme and atypical case of vote dilution and invoked the state's long history of racial polarization. She warned that nothing would stop Alabama and many other states from dismantling their existing majority-minority districts, leaving black voters in entire swaths of the country with no ability to elect their preferred representatives if the Voting Rights Act were curtailed. Alabama defended its maps as the product of a race-neutral process, arguing that requiring a state to take race into account when drawing districts would itself be a race-based discrimination. The plaintiffs seek a racially gerrymandered plan, Alabama Solicitor General Edmund LaCour told the justices. A unanimous federal appeals court, including 2 nominees of former President Trump, sided last year with the black voters, ruling that Alabama needed to create a second majority black district in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act. I think that's crap, honestly. I do. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, number one, when you're having the court step in and having the federal government step in, that does take away the incentive for you to actually get involved in local politics. And that's what we need to be looking at more right now, is local politics, not federal level politics, not top down. The federal government controls that, which is, by the way, the end result of what they're trying to do with this. If you want to win the gerrymandering, if you want to win the redistricting, you need to win at a local level. Stop paying attention to what's happening in D.C. Do many of you even know who your local reps are, who your state reps are? I do. Mine suck. But do you know who they are? You should. Those are the people who draw your maps, your districts. For a reason. Because the founders didn't want the federal government to be the be-all, end-all of anything. They wanted you to be able to settle your local disputes locally. And yes, if they're going to do it and that's the other thing that they do, especially when they go back to try to control this out at a federal level. But it's racist, and they're just doing this because they're racist. So, we'll see what happens with that. The Elon news. Elon Musk. Twitter agreed to postpone Musk's Thursday deposition. Coming to CNBC via Reuters. Elon Musk and Twitter agreed to postpone the billionaire's deposition scheduled for Thursday as they tried to reach an agreement to end their litigation and close Musk's $44 billion purchase of the social media company, a source familiar with the litigation said on Wednesday. That's it. That's the tweet. So, with Twitter, I think that Musk is going to, and I really do honestly think that he wanted to have this the entire time. I don't think there was ever a question on whether or not he wanted to back out of the deal. I don't think he did. First off, I think that part of this entire thing was he wanted to expose the fact that there was so much botting going on, and there is, by the way. I made a joke about it, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that I think it was the AP fact check was talking about Kamala Harris, talking about Hurricane Ian relief going for racial equity before anything else. And somebody had come in mentioning the ratio. I think it was Styx that actually mentioned the ratio, and I said at the time, they're not going to get ratioed. I mean, it looks like a ratio right now, but they'll bot those numbers back up, and to my surprise, they actually haven't yet. Or they haven't been able to keep up, one of the two. Because the last time I checked, it was like 3,500 comments versus 1,500 likes. So yeah, apparently they still did get ratioed. And there have been questions of bots being purged. What's happening with that? I know a lot of people around me have said, oh, well, I've lost this many followers. I've lost this many followers in the news that this is coming up. But I think that some of this is burning the books to try to make this look good before Elon takes it over. It goes and exposes it all to the world. From Insider. Elon stands to be the biggest loser in his Twitter deal. Why? From Grace K. and Avery Hartmans. With a resolution in sight, Elon's battle with Twitter has left one clear loser, the richest man in the world. But experts say the bankers, lawyers, and employees who have long sucked into Musk's orbit may also pay a price for the months-long legal battle. Wedbush technical analyst Dan Ives compared Musk's purchase to the trading of caviar to buy a $2 slice of pizza. It's a poor trade for the billionaire, as well as for the over dozens of investors who have offered to back the $44 billion purchase. Meanwhile, for Twitter, the business, it's a clear win against a man who has been loath to back down in the past, as well as a coup for shareholders who stand to gain if Musk makes good on his offer inside the company. However, Musk's potential takeover is already frustrating employees and sparking fears over future layoffs. I don't think he's going to have to do any layoffs. I think a lot of the pink hairs are going to leave. Here's who could get hurt in the battle for Twitter's future and who stands to benefit. And we've got a lot of things I like and things that I hate today too, so we're probably not going to be going too much further out of this. But we'll see what we can get to today. Elon Musk. Musk's U-turn on the Twitter purchase is not only a rare instance of the billionaire accepting defeat, but it has put him in an even worse situation when it comes to financing the deal. The Tesla CEO has repeatedly disparaged and helped lower the stock price of the company he plans to purchase. Since Musk's initial acquisition offer, Twitter stock has slid as much as 26%, though shares of the social media company surged 22% after the billionaire once again said he plans to buy it. Observers argue that Musk is overpaying, especially compared to Twitter's main rivals, by paying $54.20 a share. Musk will pay more than double the current valuation of Meta and Snap. Musk's wealth, the majority of which is tied up in Tesla's share price, has also plunged in the months since, when he agreed to buy Twitter in April. He was worth $257 billion, according to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index. Since Twitter's board accepted Musk's offer on April 25th, Tesla has dropped 28%. Now Musk is worth around $30 billion less on paper before reaching the initial deal agreement. Musk's actions have also appeared to have detrimental effect on Twitter's operations. Stifel analyst Mark Kelly and Thomas Doheny said, "We believe the company he may soon own is considerably less attractive at this point, with a steady drumbeat of departures across the ranks and a product that has been in limbo since April, when the deal was originally announced," Kelly and Doheny wrote in a note published on Tuesday. The banks, aside from Musk, those financing the deal, have the most to lose. The parties, which include Morgan Stanley and Bank of America to name a few, will be faced with the financing the deal after months of subpoenas and back and forth between Twitter and Musk. From the bank's perspective, this is less than ideal, Ives told Reuters. The banks have had their backs to the wall. They have no choice but to finance the deal. Twitter employees. And for the Twitter employees, the entire saga is devastating. Harry Kramer, a professor of management and strategy at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, previously told Insider. "An organization is its people," Kramer said. "Your people, instead of working, are spending most of their time trying to figure out who owns the company, and what's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to my family? How do you plan for what's your new product or development is going to be over the next year when you don't know what's going to happen next week? Planning kind of comes to a halt." In fact, the news that Musk has re-upped his offer to buy the company also comes as Twitter employees were sitting in 2023 strategy meetings, the meeting some employees fear could be rendered pointless under new ownership. One employee, senior financial analyst Parker Lyons, tweeted a meme to that effect, implying that the company's 2023 plans were now worthless. Well, they kind of were to begin with. Who wins? Twitter. Twitter shareholders. Parag Agrawal, who is going to make out with buku bucks. And the lawyers, who all got paid buku bucks to go and do this. And yeah, I think this is still going to go. So, we'll see what happens. And by the way, they're also saying that Donald Trump could be allowed back on the platform within a matter of days. Like, early next week is possible. I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't think he's going to come back. A funny one here, Posobiec tweets out, "Career criminal Gage Grosskreutz seeks name change a year after Kyle Rittenhouse trial due to constant harassment." And he links to a post-millennial article, but I have one from Insider. A man who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse wants to change his name after receiving death threats for 2 years. From Isabella Zavaris. A man who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse during a 2020 protest in Kenosha wants to change his name after enduring death threats for 2 years. You want to know who I think a lot of these death threats are probably coming from? There are probably, by the way, right-wing morons who are doing so. And I disavow those people. But I would be willing to bet that a lot of his death threats are coming from irritated leftoids who believe, after they get curb stomped in a Twitter argument, that the entirety of the case was lost over Gage coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, I pointed my gun at him first." A man who was shot by Rittenhouse during a 2020 protest in Kenosha wants to change his name after enduring death threats for 2 years. Gage Grosskreutz filed a secret petition to change his legal name on Tuesday, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. So while I'm reading this here, those of you, and this is a little bit of a slow day in chat today, but those of you who are here, the 5 of you that are here, let's get some suggestions for Gage's new name in the chat. Do your worst. I think that it should have something with Armstrong in it. I think that would be perfect. In a statement made through his lawyer, Grosskreutz said, "Yeah, after 2 years of death threats from right-wing lunatics, I made the difficult decision to change my name for the protection of me and my family." Now, mind you, he wasn't worried about protecting his family when he was robbing them, but he's worried about them now. Grosskreutz told CNN in September of 2020 that he and his family members, including his 65-year-old grandmother, were receiving death threats from supporters of Rittenhouse. Which, by the way, if that's true, I disavow that. But the real story here isn't that I'm seeking to change my name, but it's a process that's supposed to protect and shield those in danger. Was undermined and sealed information was released to the right-wing media within hours of my filing, the statement continued. The Journal reported that Grosskreutz requested an investigation by the Milwaukee County Clerk of Court after the sealed petition was leaked to the Kenosha County Eye, which published the story on Wednesday. The outlet is run by Kevin Mathewson, who used Facebook to organize a group to protect the city from disorder during the protest, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Mathewson denied having any contact with Rittenhouse during the unrest in Kenosha, the Times reported. Mathewson told Insider the information did not come from anyone in the Milwaukee County Clerk of Court's office, and the night that he published the story, Grosskreutz attorneys sent him a litigation hold notice, asking him to preserve any evidence that he may have about the case. "I won't give up my source, and I'd probably rather go to jail than give up my source," he said. Persecutors charged Rittenhouse with 2 counts of homicide, along with several other crimes. Rittenhouse fatally shot Rosenbaum and Huber and injured Grosskreutz amid civil unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Civil unrest orchestrated by... Yeah, we're probably not going to go into that right now. Following the police shooting of St. Jacob, hallowed be his name, Rittenhouse pleaded not guilty to the charges and was fully acquitted on November 19, 2021, after arguing he acted in self-defense. What should his new name be? Left Armstrong, I think, is what it should be. That's what it should be. Lefty Armstrong. Let's do these last 3, and then we'll do things I like and things that I hate, and head out of here for the day. DC Council advances bill to let non-citizens vote. Because, of course, they did. From Julia Mueller. DC City Council on Tuesday voted to advance a bill that would allow non-citizen residents to vote in local elections. Our immigrant neighbors of all statuses participate, contribute, and care about our community and our city. They, like all DC residents, deserve a right to have a say in their government, said DC Council member Charles Allen, introducing a bill during the Tuesday legislative meeting. Well, if they wanted to have a say in your government, they should actually make themselves a part of your constituency, apply for legal resident status, citizenship, naturalization, they raise families here, contribute to their community, they run businesses that people depend on, and they pay taxes that we decide how to spend. Yet they have no ability to elect local leaders who make decisions about their bodies, their businesses, and their tax dollars, Allen said. Well, again, they probably have an opportunity to apply for citizenship or at least legal resident alien status. The bill would allow non-citizen residents in the city who otherwise meet voting requirements to vote in local elections, including mayoral, school board, and attorney general races, regardless of visa or documentation status. The council members voted 12-1 in favor of the bill on first reading, greenlighting the bill to go ahead for a final vote before it's sent to Muriel Bowser. So there you go. All those people that they shipped over on the buses to Washington, D.C. now get to vote for Muriel Bowser again. Another divorce going on in Congress, by the way. Rep. Stevens' husband divorced after a year of marriage. Not 28 years like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but another one going. In a win for the residents of Mass, from the New York Post, Supreme Court tosses mass gun law in latest Second Amendment win. From Mark Moore. The U.S. Supreme Court vacated a Massachusetts gun control law in one of the first orders of its new term following the justice's June ruling, striking down a New York statute that required people to show proper cause if they wanted to carry a concealed firearm in public. The Mass case, Morin versus Liver, concerned the plaintiff being denied a new firearm license because he had 2 out-of-state misdemeanor convictions for weapons possession. Mass law places severe restrictions on the possession and purchase of firearms, including the ability to obtain a license to possess handguns if convicted of nonviolent misdemeanors. The Supreme Court on Monday vacated a ruling by a lower court that found the Mass law constitutional. The High Court also sent the case back to the First Circuit Court of Appeals in light of its June ruling in the New York gun case. Clarence Thomas, writing in the 6-3 majority, said the law's requirement that New Yorkers who want a permit to carry a handgun in public show proper cause that the weapon is specifically needed for self-defense violates the 14th Amendment by preventing law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their rights to keep and bear arms in public. The Supreme Court's order in the Mass case was unsigned and there were no dissents. So I would like to, I'll probably spend some time today looking over and seeing what this decision actually entailed, whether this means that the licensing requirement's gone or whether it's the fact that they can't use other states' statistics for their licensing. I don't know. I don't anticipate the people in Boston and the State House relaxing a licensing requirement. I don't. I think that that's going to be a thing no matter what, but I'd be interested to see where we go from this. And the last one, in a very, very significant win for justice, and a great thing for us to move into thing that I like from KMOV4. Man convicted in David Dord's death, sentenced to life. From Stephanie Ussery. Oh, there might be some video with this one too. The man convicted of killing a retired St. Louis police captain has been sentenced to life in prison. Stephen Cannon, 26, spoke for the first time in court, insisting he's not the person who shot and killed police captain David Dorn. "I'm sorry for the family's loss, but this ain't justice," he said. "Mark Jackson knows who did this." Jackson was at the crime scene and was a witness in Cannon's trial. Jackson's Pontiac G6 was swapped for DNA, and 10 fingerprints were lifted. You can read more witness testimony here. Despite his plea, Judge Teresa Counts Burke sentenced Cannon to life without the possibility of parole, the maximum sentence allowed under law. Cannon is facing an additional 30 years in prison for the 5 other charges he was convicted on, including robbery and burglary. "It meant everything to us to hear the words of life without parole, to know that Stephen Cannon will never be able to do this to a family again," said Lisa Dorn, David's daughter. "It gave us some relief and peace." In July, Stephen Cannon was convicted on 6 counts, including the first-degree murder of David Dorn. Prosecutors said Cannon shot and killed Dorn in 2020 at Lee's pawn shop during the unrest in the wake of the George Floyd riots, government ops, whatever you want to call them. During Wednesday's sentencing hearing, members of Dorn's family addressed Cannon directly, reading statements expressing the pain and suffering they've endured since Dorn's death. His daughter Lisa told the court that Dorn was killed by the same kind of young man he spent his career trying to mentor and help. "I'm glad justice was served today. It's just so sad no one wins in this situation," said Brian Powell, Dorn's son, who spoke directly to Cannon. Powell said his brother had worked with young people through the city sports leagues for nearly 20 years, hoping to make a positive impact on their lives.
Information tonight in the murder of retired St. Louis captain David Dorn. Nearly 2.5 years after his murder, his killer finally knows his fate. Dorn was murdered outside a North City pawn shop while he tried to protect the business from looters. Caroline Hecker has been following this case very closely and was in the courtroom during sentencing today. Caroline?
Guys, Stephan Cannon walked into the courtroom this morning with his hands in his pockets, and he walked out in handcuffs. The judge handing down the maximum sentence allowed under the law, life in prison without the possibility of parole. And for the first time, the Dorn family able to address Stephan Cannon directly, expressing the pain and the suffering they have endured since his death.
It'll never bring David back. We'll never get full closure, but it's peace knowing that Stephan Cannon will never be on the street and be able to hurt another person again.
Now, the judge did not allow this hearing to be recorded, but she did allow us inside the courtroom before everything got underway. After family members spoke, she did give Stephan Cannon himself a chance to speak, and we heard from him for the first time. He told the judge and the family that he was sorry for their pain and their loss, but he insisted he was not the person that pulled the trigger and killed David Dorn.
I expected him to say that this is not me and I did not do it.
So that's what they're saying on the exit interviews here. And with that, we're going to move into a few things that I like and a few things that I hate. So, thing that I like number 1 today is an article that's actually been floating around the stack for, I think, over a week. Yep, this one right here. From the New York Post, Black gun rights activists demand closed borders in Austin protest. Based. This I've been holding on to this since September 26th. From Allie Griffin. A group of armed Black Second Amendment activists marched through Austin over the weekend and called on the U.S. to close its borders and put an end to illegal immigration. The protesters, gathered together by Elmer Geronimo Pratt Gun Club, moved through the city towards the Texas Capitol on Saturday in what they called the Second Amendment Unity Walk. As they marched through the streets, activists chanted in support of closed borders and against immigration, according to the footage shot by journalist Ford Fisher. "What do we want?" one protester asked. "Closed borders," the group yelled back. "When do we want it?" the protester asked. "Now," the group replied. I guess my same criticism goes with the people who use hey, hey, ho, ho constantly is you guys should maybe get a new chant. In another chant, the protesters told immigrants to go back to their home countries. "Immigrants, we've been here," the woman yelled into the microphone. "Take your butt home," the group chanted in response. One woman attempted to start a "Build the Wall" chant in reference to former President Trump's campaign promise to construct the border wall. Her attempt didn't go over well, though. "Yeah, let's not do that," one person replied. "Why? It's an effective message." And, I mean, it's fantastic to see. It's very based, very red-pilled. And especially since it's a pro-Second Amendment march, I know that... What's the official narrative from the left at this point? Oh, well, if black people start carrying around rifles and doing marches like this, then we'll get gun control in a hurry. No, I don't want gun control, and I know a lot of people that don't as well. There are a few out there. Some of them I call my friends, who do believe that these people should be disarmed just based solely on the color of their skin, but no, they should be able to protect themselves. They should be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And they should be able to express their grievances with the government. I'm happy for this. And I'm glad to see that there is some common ground, and this is probably a part of that tick of the vote that's moving away from Biden, because he is losing large portions of the black vote as he goes. So that is thing that I like number one. Thing that I like number two. This comes from where I used to live and spent actually most of my adult life. From Fox 6 Milwaukee. Kenosha Lego home sold only on the market for 2 days. Which last I checked on Zillow, it actually has not... the price hasn't posted the fact that it's sold on Zillow yet, so it still shows an active listing on Zillow. It's been that soon. But this house is cool. From Spencer Tracy and Fox 6 News digital team. The housing market has been extremely hot in the last year or so, but who could have imagined a house with a distinctly Lego theme would hit the market and sell as fast as it did? From the outside, the Kenosha home looks pretty normal, but inside it's a Lego theme. The mastermind behind it is owner Jameson Gagnon. Well, not anymore. "I've been building it since I was a little kid," he said. Gagnon and his wife share the same passion. "We actually had a Lego-themed wedding," he said. In 2010, the couple bought the home on 61st Avenue. All it needed was some TLC. In 2010, it probably needed a little bit more than that. "This house, when we bought it, was in foreclosure," said Gagnon. "We weren't afraid to customize the house and make it our own." The family said the renovations did not happen overnight. The home is the definition of DIY, from the living room to the kitchen. With a 4,000-piece backsplash and even the bathroom, Legos can be found all over the house. After 12 years and 3 kids, the family is ready for their next home. "Lego or not, you make a lot of memories," Gagnon said. "We have a lot of history." 2 weeks ago, they put the house on the market for $250,000. Realtor Alyssa Trauber said it sold in just 2 days, way over asking price. It's kind of a niche thing, though, too, so... I've sold some high-end multi-million-dollar homes, but I had no idea it would go viral and pick up this much traction, she said. "We've been getting more and more attention ever since. Such a surreal experience," said Gagnon. Closing the chapter on one home, the family said they will never Lego of the piece. They have more than 1 million Legos and plan to make Lego renovations in their new home. And by the way, everybody in town knows this house. It was only 4 years along when I moved out of town, but it's well known around the town that they did this. You've seen puff pieces about this, stories about this. This is a well known, not a lot of people have been in there. I've never been in the house. I know where it is based on the address, which, by the way, I got the Zillow, so we can actually have a look at some of the other pictures that they have with that, the realty pictures with it. But yeah, this is cool. And even in a point where the market is tanking, people want to go out and get these niche little things. Kind of makes me excited to buy a house and kind of theme it up the way that it needs to be and make it my own rather than just another cookie cutter, which, I mean, this does look like on the outside. Just another cookie cutter. This is the Zillow listing there, and yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the outside, what would you expect? Nothing. This is just another cookie cutter, fabricated, pre-built house from, I think this one is from the 80s. 2-car garage. Almost every other lot on that block has a house that looks identical to that. The only one is the newer house that's next to it right there that is post 2000s. But yeah, when you get into the inside, you see the big backsplash over here. The island kitchen, which is phenomenal, with the sink on the island. The landscape in the backyard. Yeah, they did a lot of stuff and a lot of good to this house, which, like I say, it was rough when they bought it in 2010. So that is the Lego house. I know they've got the listing still. Interested in touring this home? No, it's already sold. And now for a couple of things that I hate. Thing that I hate, number one, because you knew it was going to come, especially after Marvel went to Disney. From the Blaze, Pfizer BioNTech sponsor, a cringeworthy Marvel comic that promotes the Pinko-Pox jab. From Alex Nitzberg. Pfizer and BioNTech have sponsored a cringeworthy Marvel comic that serves as a vehicle to promote the Pinko-Pox jab. You know, after we're being told that we don't need it anymore, after all the guidance is going out there and all the people are starting to sue because they lost their jobs over not getting it. Yes, now we're going to go talk about how we didn't need it after all. The story opens with the family waiting to get the Pinko-Pox jab, while the Avengers are just blocks away fighting an enemy known as Ultron. Ultron keeps coming back, keeps changing and evolving, so the Avengers keep adapting and re-strategizing, and they knock him... Oh my god. I already know where we're going with this, and I hate it. And they knock him back again and again, the grandfather character says. Later in the story, the grandfather says, "I've seen their pattern so many times before. Ultron evolves, the Avengers gather information and take time to innovate and adapt." He then says the Avengers figure out how to fight it, putting together the existing knowledge and research along with the new information that they've learned. And Pfizer actually puts out the tweet with this, with the comic book cover on it. "The Avengers are doing their part to help keep us safe. Now it's time for us to do ours," the grandfather says as the family heads to get their jabs. At the conclusion of the comic, most of the family members can be seen with band-aids on their arms because they've just received a Pinko-Pox jab. "Everyday heroes don't wear capes," the ad said at the end of the... Of course it said that. An ad at the end of the sponsored comic declares, "But they do all wear a small bandage on their upper arm after they get their latest Pinko-Pox jab, because everyday heroes are concerned about their health, and they're people who choose to unite with their communities and do their part to help protect against the Pinko-Pox." Thanks, I hate it. Thanks, I hate it. We're going to do this one first, and then we'll do the big story of things that I hate today. From Ranger Monk, rather. Cops. And this is why you should always keep a hidden one out there too. Watch what he does as he comes in and he sees the surveillance camera. And I don't know what he's even there about to do, but the fact that he knows to go back and do this is enough for me to hate this. And he puts a glove on too to make sure there's no fingerprints. Thanks, I hate it. But the big thing that I hate from Variety Velma is officially a lesbian in the new Scooby-Doo film, years after James Gunn and Moore tried to make her explicitly gay. From Ethan Shanfield. Velma is officially a lesbian. Clips from the brand new movie Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, which show the Mystery Incorporated member being googly-eyed and speechless when encountering a costume designer, Coco Diablo, have gone viral on Twitter, confirming suspicions held by the Scooby fan base for decades. "Oh my god, lesbian Velma, finally," reads one tweet, which has over 100,000 likes. It's long been an open secret among fans and Scooby-Doo creatives that Velma is gay. Even James Gunn, who wrote the early live-action films, and Tom Cervoni, who served as supervising producer for the Mystery Incorporated series, have confirmed the character's sexuality, but they were never able to make it an official on-screen. And why would you, by the way? What does it add to anything? In 2020, Gunn tweeted that he tried to make Velma a lesbian in the live-action movies. In 2001, Velma was explicitly gay in my initial script, he wrote, but the studio kept watering it down, becoming ambiguous, the version shot, then nothing, the release version, and finally having a boyfriend, the sequel. During the 2020 Pride Month, Cervoni wrote on Instagram, I've said this before, but Velma in Mystery Incorporated is not bi, she's gay. We always planned on Velma acting a little off and out of character when she was dating Shaggy because the relationship was wrong for her, and she had unspoken difficulty with the why. There are hints about the why in that episode with the mermaid, and if you follow the entire Marcy arc, it seems as clear as we could make it 10 years ago. I don't think Marcy and Velma had time to act on their feelings during the main timeline, but post-reset, they are a couple. You cannot like it, but this was our intention. Honestly, the problem with it is I don't care. For two reasons. Number one, it doesn't add anything to the story whatsoever. Number two, and this is the big one that goes along with that. Number two, the big one, is that this is something that we've been joking about since at least 2001, which that movie that I'm about to reference was filmed in 2000. Watch clips from Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, out digitally October 4th, below. And first we've got Velma first meeting Coco Diablo in Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo. And then, this is my favorite scene of her. And then I'll show you why this was never a new thing.
And as promised, here are your Scooby snacks.
And of course the love interest has to look like that, because why wouldn't she? She has to look like an irritating platinum hipster.
Jinkies.
And the other one that they want to foist onto you.
I'm sure that Coco made some brilliant observations in the encounter we just had.
The cute one's right. Esteban, show them my brilliant observations. Black.
Yeah, they're trying too hard with that. With these scenes, the first one I could see. I mean, if you are trying to go back out to normalize this, I could see. But I mean, this last one here, they're trying too hard. They're just trying too hard. But, as I contend, this has always been a thing. But we're not going to use the Carrie Fisher part of this. We'll actually scroll ahead off of this. And by the way, this movie that we're about to watch the clip from came out in '01, as it says on the side of there. This came out in 2001, so this has been at least out in the public eye, because this was a mainstream movie, for 21 years. And trust me, it's been talked about for much, much longer than that.
Zoinks, yo. Now we can finally solve the mystery of the hitchhiking ghouls. Pull off their masks and let's see who they really are.
I don't think they are masks.
And I
By the way, if you've got the kids in the room, earmuffs, because this is a Kevin Smith movie. I just realized that right before it got to the part where they're going to say things that they need to.
don't think that they're hitchhiking girls either.
Ghouls, you fucking moron, not girls. I wish they were hitchhiking girls. Sexy hitchhiking girls.
Let's kick them out. And let's see who they really are.
I don't think they are masks.
And I don't think that they're hitchhiking girls either.
Ghouls, you fucking moron, not girls. I wish they were hitchhiking girls. Sexy hitchhiking girls.
Let's kick them out.
Yeah, this has been a thing in conversations. It's not something you explicitly needed to say and actually make a relationship to slam it in front of everybody's heads. It's something that's been long suspected by fans of the show forever. And again, it doesn't add anything to the story. Neither does the obvious sexual cues between Fred and Daphne, which have also been joked about in Scooby-Doo fandoms from the beginning. You don't need to explicitly put it up on the screen in order for us to get it. We get it. There are ambiguities to it. But no, they'd rather come back out and shove it all in our faces. So, with that, that's things that I like and things that I hate today. Nice long list today, and that helped us actually get through a lot of the stuff that we had on the stack. Especially some older stuff that... some of the stuff I've been having to bounce just because it fell out of relevance because there's been so much and they've been such heavy topics. But, we're getting to that point where, maybe it'll start slowing down or they're going to try to not put so many things up there. But, yeah, I think it's time for us to head out of here. It is. It's 9:40. It is time for us to head out of here. So, with that, we're going to be done for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came and hung out with us. Everybody who was here. And it was a light day today, but we've had some really, really, really good attendance weeks this week as well. So I'm very happy to see that. If you are just lurking right now, get those last minute messages in so I know that you are here, because tomorrow we go through the notebook. I read the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat, everybody who was hanging out with us, which it does look like we've got a name that I think I've seen before, but not for quite a while. So Dog Brains has been here, and yeah, I think Dog Brains has been here before. So anyway, we'll get all the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat, and we'll look at some of the live chat for tomorrow as well. See what it is that you guys have to say about what's going on in the news. So stick around, come back and hang out with us for that. It's always a good time. It's always a fun time. I love coming out and doing that part of things. So definitely come back and join us here for that. Otherwise, yeah, the weekend looks like it's pretty wide open. There are some things that I have to take care of this weekend, but they are all done from home, so we're not missing a game stream, and we probably won't miss one on Monday. Remember, Saturday we start Mass Effect again. Well, not again. Well, I should be starting it for the first time. And I am playing this blind. I know nothing about the story. I have avoided spoilers as much as possible. No, completely actually avoided spoilers. I know no plot lines. I know nothing about this game. So we're going to go and learn about this together. The only thing I know about this game is that I did load it up a little bit to make sure that it all runs and works well on my computer. So we're not trying to do that on the middle of a live stream. So come back and join me Saturday for new game, new discovery, and a completely blind playthrough. Something that we haven't done on this channel yet, because everything I've played is something I've played many, many, many times. Otherwise, come back and join us tomorrow or Monday for more Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.